Progress.
Okay, we'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, January 25th. First item on the agenda tonight is roll call.
Miller,
Here.
Rosado,
Here.
Beck,
Here.
Connolly,
Here.
Connolly,
Here.
Jansen, Sofa,
Here.
Wolf,
Here.
Barron,
Here.
Lehman,
Here.
Ayazi,
Here.
Malay,
Here.
Ewer,
Here.
Cerrone,
Here.
and Vogelsinger. Here. We have 13 out of 14.
All right, thank you. Up next, item number 2, reminder to please speak directly into the microphone for the BATV recording and broadcast, and make sure that you are muted unless you are speaking. Thank you. Up next would be approval of the minutes for October 26, 2021, November 2nd, 2021, November 8th, 2021, November 9th, 2021, and November 16th, 2021. Anybody have any comments or changes, corrections, anything on those? If not, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Self, a second by Miller. Roll call, please.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
and Chansett absent. Motion carried 13-0.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any items that were removed, added, or changed tonight?
No, we don't.
Okay. Up next would be matters from the public for items not on tonight's agenda.
We
have
have some
anybody-
folks who are attendees. If you have anything that you would like to speak on, which is not on the agenda, if you would please raise your hand. And there are none.
Okay. Up next would be item 6, the consent agenda. Reads as follows. Item A, Ordinance 2205, declaring certain property to be surplus and authorizing sale thereof. Anybody have any questions on that? If not, I'll make the motion that we recommend to council the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Sofa. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron, Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chansett absent, and Sofa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you. Up next would be item number 7. We have a presentation on the progress update on the water treatment plant. Welcome.
Hello, good evening again. It's been a little over a month since the last update presentation. Again, I'm Stephen Dennison with Engineering Enterprises, principal in charge of the project. I have here with me Emily Conti. I've been providing the updates so far. I think it's been 3 that we've given. This is the 4th. I figured you might want to see somebody else giving the presentation. Emily has been her eyes and ears on site. She is there very frequently throughout the week, checking up on the contractor's progress and making sure everything's going in per the plans and specifications. So she is going to lead the presentation tonight and giving you the update.
And can I ask you to share your screen through Zoom?
Oh, yes. Let's see. Escape.
Green button at the bottom there
There it is.
and PowerPoint. Yep. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Hi, my name's Emily. Like Steve said, I've been doing construction observation out at Batavia. So an overview on the scope. We're going to add in this new brine addition, which the building itself is constructed, as you've probably seen in past updates. The concrete driveway out front, and then relocating that access road. The underground backwash storage tank has been added and is nearly complete, and then some well rehabs. Wells 10 and 11 are off-site and not shown on this overall plan, and then well 9 is located right there. The progress from this past month, so the building expansion, like I said, the building is up, the roof is on, there's been some exterior work, so continuing with the electrical outside, and the shutters were installed, and then inside they did put in the FRP brine tanks, which you can see in the pictures. The floor coating has been completed. They're continuing work on installing the brine equipment pumping and attaching that to the existing system. They put in the water line to the new bathroom in that building, and then as well as the bathroom fixtures, and then some of the inside doors have been installed. So the backwash storage tank, that was officially online November 18th of this past year. The only outstanding item for this would be the level sensors, which they're waiting to install. Well 11 rehab, so the pumping assembly was received by the contractor on January 18th. That's expected to be reinstalled sometime early February. High service pump rehab, so high service pumps number 3 and number 4. One of them's in water treatment plant 1 and the other's in treatment plant 2. Those were actually reinstalled mid-January. Startup for those is ongoing, and the next 2 pumps will be pulled for rehab as soon as those other pumps are put back online. So the dualator rehab has also started as well. The media was removed from dualator number 2, and the tank inspection was completed. The painters have began to mobilize for sandblasting and coating of that dualator, and then the new valves, piping, and control panel have been delivered, and they're stored on site. Some of it is in boxes, which is covered outside, and then the control panel is stored inside. So the next steps moving forward. So ongoing brine building modifications, finishing up some of that piping, continuing the rehab for dualator number 2, completing high service pump 3 and 4 startup and getting those back online, removing the next 2 high service pumps, and then the well 11 equipment installation. Here's an updated construction schedule. Any questions?
Nope, I'm just happy to see the fact that we got the pump back and ready to go back in the well, so. Nick?
Yeah, the picture of the underground, like the second slide, is that replacing the retention area? Is that going to be grown over, or is that still going to be there?
This one?
No, go back, and I mean, that's it, but that.
So you can show, if you scroll to it, so that's the previous showing.
Right.
And if you scroll forward, that is, if you look in the upper left-hand picture, that's the finished product.
So it is completely replaced, gotcha.
Yeah, and then once spring rolls around, they're gonna sod that area and it'll be covered.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
And Alderman Vogelsinger has her hand up.
Okay.
Hi, could you show us that very last slide one more time?
Yes, the schedule.
Yeah, the schedule. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think the main point with the schedule is that we're still on target for the final completion date. There's been a couple
Yeah.
of items, particularly well 11, that have stretched longer, with it being taken about 6 months to obtain the pumping equipment. But as it stands moving forward, we're going to try to make up some of that time and anticipate to have the subsequent well rehabs go a little bit more quickly, and there's going to be some discussion on that. But the critical path items are on schedule, particularly with the brine area and water plant 2 and putting the new backwash tank online. And now we're into the dualators, and that's another critical path. We need to get those 2 dualators rehabbed by spring. So we're going to be fighting it a little bit, but we anticipate by spring, May timeframe, to have the second dualator rehabbed.
Thank you.
Leah?
If I remember correctly, last time you were here, you said you were working, like, with the filtering of the media was kind of like a science project. How is that going?
I do have an update on that. That is going well. The staff has been on top of that, doing daily testing to make sure that the treatment characteristics are being kept alive with the filtration and the media and the characteristics that we need in order to reseed that media, that existing media, into the replacement media in the dualator. So they've actually taken some of that existing media. They are running water through it at the backup well 5 facility on the east side of town here. And so they're maintaining it there, doing the testing, making sure it's all going as planned, and we plan on reinstalling that with the new media. So we should be able to provide another good update in another month when we're closer to putting the new media in, to understand better how effective that was. And then it'll take a little bit of time after that to understand how well it proliferates with the new media. It is integrated in there and is treating as we expect it to. Regardless, the treatment is going to be up to standard. It's a matter of really reducing the amount of chlorine that has to be added in for disinfection is really what we're trying to strive to, reducing the chemical injection and costs related to that.
But so far, so good.
So far, so good.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Excellent. Glad to hear we got parts and we're moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, up next would be item number 8, which is an approval for Batavia Main Street capital proposal for downtown information kiosk signage. Good evening.
Hi, everyone. Bob Hanson, current president of Batavia Main Street, and Beth Walker, our director. We're here to discuss a capital expenditure project that actually Rob Hollis, one of our directors back in October or so, suggested that we form a committee to spend some money. Several years back, we had approved a $20,000 expenditure that kind of fell to the wayside for various reasons, and we thought that putting a committee together and coming up with some ideas for some capital expenditure in downtown. The idea, after several committee meetings of different options, we came down to our favorite, which was installing 5 kiosks in the downtown area. If we can go to the next slide.
Hey, Bob, excuse me, Bob.
Could you state in front of the mic so that way we make sure everybody
Sure.
can hear you?
Perfect.
Hybrid meetings are so much fun to try to figure out and make sure everybody can hear everything.
All righty. So our goal here is, the board last week approved the money for 5 kiosks throughout the downtown. The kiosks are, if you want to go to the next slide, Beth did some research and found these, I believe, up in Champaign. And from there, we talked to different contractors and things. And if you go to the next slide, we ended up speaking with Mark Adams, who a local artist, some of you might know, who came up with this design here. This is 86 inches tall, 37 inches wide, a 24 by 36 stainless steel compartment, what do you want to call it? Outdoor bulletin board, perfect, thank you. And those we would purchase. The structure itself would be powder coated, and the color would be matching the street lights and things per city request. We met with the city last week also. Next slide, here's our budget, a total of about $21,500 or so. We have walked the sites with Scott Haynes last week. If you want to go to the next slide to show our first location. It's at the corner of River and the pedestrian bridge in North River, right? Okay.
Yes.
Walking the site with Scott, that looked like a real nice spot where we can even potentially do a double-sided kiosk there at some time. That's city property too, right, Scott? Where'd Scott go?
Well, Gary's here.
Second location was down by the Boardwalk Shops, be to the right of the entrance as you come in off of Wilson Street. The third is in the plaza right outside the door here by the Bulldog, also city property.
Actually, Park District.
This spot here
Oh,
is
this
actually
particular
on the
spot.
easement for city,
Oh, okay,
so it worked out well.
perfect.
Yep.
All right.
Site number 4 is at the corner of Wilson and Batavia Avenue. This one here has to be approved by the library because it is on their easement. They're meeting on February 3rd. So we're hoping to get approval for that location. The next slide, number 5, is down, well, actually right in front of the old post office to the west, and that's on BEI property. And Austin is very interested in seeing more details about this and learning what it might take to get easement approval and things like that for signage there. Number 6 would be an alternative to something else, to one of the others if they didn't work out. This one is over by the Water Street and Wilson, on the curb. There's a curb right by the railing that we would ask BEI again if we can mount it on that railing right behind a park bench right now. So that's it. Freaking simple.
Bob, that last one, where exactly was it at?
The last one's right at the railing on the west side of BEI's parking lot up on the street level.
So
Maybe
Water
open
Street
era?
and Wilson on the southeast corner
Okay,
of there.
Where the silent disco was.
got it.
I guess the first question I have is, are those easily movable? Like if we have a base and it's just, what is it, bolts that come out of the ground to mount those to? If they're in concrete pads?
There's one location we may have to pour a concrete pad.
Okay,
The
and
other
all
one-
I'm asking is if we mount them, is it easy to unbolt them and then mount them in another place? If we sell a piece of property that it happens to be sitting on, or something needs to change in layout of the street, we
Yes.
can do that, so they're
Yes.
simply movable?
Yeah.
They'll be installed with half-inch stainless steel anchors.
Okay. And that's what I was imagining they would be. I think it's a neat idea to have those. I know we've talked about having something like that downtown, and I know constantly you hear questions from people, well, how do I get to this? Where is this at? And how do I find this? And, my daughter works at Main Street on the farmer's market Saturdays, and that's the big question. Yeah, they can find the farmer's market because that's where all the people are. But when they want to find something else downtown, that becomes then a question that they got to walk around and ask 3 different people to find the answer to, and find somebody that's actually from Batavia to answer the question for them. Nick?
I agree. I think this is awesome. I think, from a marketing standpoint, the people that are already here, coming for one reason, let's market them and keep them here to get them to a next spot. But my question's for the city. Obviously, you've walked it and stuff. There's no concerns, issues. We're good to go ahead with this, because I would support it. I love it.
Yeah, last week, Main Street came in and met with every department that would have any input on the process, and in particular, probably the most impact would be on Scott Haynes and the Public Properties and Services from the standpoint of this time of year, being able to efficiently clear the sidewalks of snow and ice. And so the way that the signs are oriented is typically parallel to the curb, which makes that much easier. And Scott walked each one of the sites with Bob and Beth to determine exactly where best to put them, and we're in agreement on all of them.
Awesome. Then my only other thing that I would add is, if budget comes back and these are successful and we want more, like maybe a one on wheels that can go to different events and things like that.
A portable one?
A portable one, right?
Yeah, and even to me, where the bike paths come into town,
Yeah. there's so many more.
that's something that I think we've all talked about, that we struggle to try to capture as much of the crowd that we can every weekend when we've got bicyclists flying through town. that's something that I think we need to focus on too.
The Park District has a couple kiosks, various locations around town that, I can't tell you the status of them, but I know when we looked at that a few
Okay.
years back, there's a couple around.
Abby?
Yeah, I had three questions, and one of them was along those same lines, that the location at the depot seems like a great collector, but you're right, now I'm realizing there's already a kiosk there, because otherwise the ones in front of City Hall and then the end of River Street seem very close to each other compared to the rest, how they're distributed. But you had said that one of them might be double-sided. What does the back look like on the non-double-sided ones?
It'll be a flat sheet of steel, I believe,
Okay.
or it might be an outline of steel with a black back on the display cabinet.
And then who?
Either way, it'll be weatherproof.
The, who manages and what does, like, the flow of information to the kiosks?
Yeah, I didn't put that in here, sorry.
Yeah.
Good question. That'll be Main Street's responsibility. It'll be a minimum of once a month or right after a major event. That's our schedule. We're not going to have any advertising on the kiosks. The only advertising that you might see would be a flyer or a promotion for an event like Cocktails in the Park where there's sponsorships on the flyer or whatever's in the cabinet. But there won't be a big sign promoting anybody's business for advertising's sake.
Would there be wayfinding, like a map, though, on it that
Yes.
kind of lives there?
Yes. Yes, we are working on that, another project we've got going.
But the majority of the kiosk, the top section, would be allocated to that downtown directory.
Okay, very cool.
And we'll have the parking map and different things like that from time to time.
Chris?
So then in terms of the content, I think you said it'll change depending upon events, but I mean, how much of it, like percentage-wise, is gonna be permanent content versus stuff that's gonna change?
Well, the map of the downtown with all the business will probably be the most permanent piece year-round.
Right.
We'll be changing that and updating that every 6 months, give or take, depending on, how much change there is. But that'll be the most permanent piece. With all the events, how many events we running this year? 59 or so events?
Happenings.
Yes,
Yeah,
happenings,
yeah.
events. So there's a lot happening, obviously, throughout the summer months, April through October. So, during the winter months, we have less pedestrians on the road and things, so it's not going to be as much information during the winter months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mark, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, actually, most of my questions were answered. I'm definitely in favor of it. We talked a few meetings ago that I'd actually really like to see something electronic, because I think that would just be a huge benefit to have something that is more easily changed and more dynamic, and you could sell advertising on things like that. Is there any possibility that the design of it would allow for something electronic in the future that could be mounted into there? Do you know if that would be
Yes,
supported or not?
Yeah, anything's possible, it just takes money. It took about a month for us to eliminate the idea of the electronic message board after researching different products out there available. A simple 2x3 message board is upwards of $15,000 for one. Then you've got a monthly fee for the software. You've got an upfront fee, and it just became out of our budget right away, real quick. So our thought was maybe, I think we discussed briefly, maybe one digital sign somewhere downtown, maybe here, maybe down by the boardwalk, but we eliminated that to get us 5 locations within our budget. Would be a better use of money at this time.
Yeah, I agree. Surprised they're that expensive, but I guess I can see that to a point. TVs aren't that expensive, so it's
Yeah, the
surprising
indoor,
that it costs that
indoor
much.
ones are fairly affordable. The exterior ones, the outdoor ones are a lot more expensive. Then you've got to worry about Wi-Fi connections and hot points and things like that. We did our research on that, and it just became, if the city's willing to,
Hey,
Like
another
you-
$100,000.
Like you said, I'm not sure there's really the bang for the buck for
Right.
$15,000 per
Yeah.
sign.
yeah, I know when the one was proposed up by the library a decade ago or so, that was, I think, $100,000 then, and that was about I think it was 3x6.
Yeah,
Screen.
double-sided.
It was just, and it's double-sided, and it was, well over $100,000 by the time you put everything together for it.
Yep.
And that wasn't including mounting it and whatever you wanted to surround it with.
Right.
And then paying for the electricity, the Wi-Fi, everything else that had to be hooked up to it to run it.
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to add is I agree with Abby. I feel that the two on either side of the pedestrian bridge, basically, they feel a little redundant. I see capturing the stuff on River Street, not nearly as many people like park in the parking lot, the city parking lot over by City Hall and stuff like that. I would love to see, some sort of arrangement. Maybe we just need to talk to the park district about what it would look like to have both of those kiosks over by the depot, because I think it would just, you're going to capture those people coming into town and be like, well, what do we do now?
I think this is phase one on this project. I think we'll be back in a year, maybe 2 years with phase two, with additional locations and continued conversations with the park district. We didn't go down that road right now. We wanted to really get this going with 5 high pedestrian use areas, in our opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that this one here is in a good spot because on the west side here, because you got everybody that comes down and makes the loop on the Riverwalk, and if we can capture, again, I love using 10%. If we can get 10% of people that walk down and walk the Riverwalk every day to go somewhere else in town to spend money, that's a great thing.
Yeah, from my vantage point outside my office window, it's all day, every day.
Mhm.
That people are making the walk around the peninsula on the Riverwalk.
We did get a discount from Mark for ordering more than 3 by a couple, $200-300 a piece. If the park district were interested in purchasing a couple, maybe he can work a little bit of magic with us, I don't know. We can have that conversation.
Okay, I haven't seen anybody that said no to this, so I don't know, do we need a formal motion or approval on this?
I think it couldn't hurt just to
Okay.
take a vote of approval
Sure.
and on them moving forward with the project and submitting it to community development.
I'll make that motion to approve this to move forward.
Second?
Motion by Saron, second by Lehman. Roll call, please.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chanted, absent, Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Agassi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
and Ewer.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
And then, Laura,
Yes.
what would the process of this need to be to finalize?
It would be a submittal to community development for the permits for installation.
We got all that, all you need to
Yep.
do that, right?
Awesome.
Very familiar with that process.
Yes.
Look forward to seeing these go up.
Yeah,
Yes.
the goal is to get installed by mid-May at the latest.
Okay.
So
Great.
We're in good shape.
All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, up next is item 9, discussion on annexation of unincorporated islands status. I'm sure everybody got to read through the memo that we got with this. This is part of our discussion we've had in the past, past 2 or 3 years. We've really been going at a lot of these, and after the last few, we really discussed amongst the city council that we needed to do a little bit different procedure to make it a little bit, I guess, more obvious why we were doing this, why we wanted, people to see the benefits of what annexation meant, overall to them, not just, hey, you're going to be part of the city.
Thank you. What we had done as part of our memo is I kind of outlined the process that we have been following for these annexations. And essentially, the first thing we do is we send a letter to the property owners asking them to submit a voluntary annexation petition. You can see in the sample letter that, we detail some of the things that people have been most concerned about with, costs and impacts on them. We haven't really emphasized a lot of the benefits per se in there. So what we did at the request of the committee is we put together kind of an informational sheet that talks about the benefits of annexation that we would in the future include with these letters so that they could see that there are some things, there's some savings in some cases that they could see on their insurance. The garbage contracts we found is one thing that they can save some money on. The offset from the city versus the fire district is, a benefit. It doesn't completely offset the fire district costs, but there is an offset in there. And then in many cases, there are things that they benefit from, but they are kind of free rider things where they are getting utility service from the city, or that we are already maintaining the street in front of their homes. So some of those things they're getting the benefit of the city's maintenance of those things, or the police driving by every day, but they're not paying for it in property taxes. So those are some things that we put in there as benefits, but they may not look at those as a true benefit, but they are to the city as a whole. So we put together that. Our plan is to send that out to everybody when we send future letters. And then what we did is kind of outlined, we put together a map on there, and then we put a kind of a schedule for what we have left. I mean, we're just past halfway, I would say, in the annexations from when we first started this. So we're getting near the halfway point of getting these done. But some of these become a little bit more complicated because they are more cohesive neighborhoods with areas that don't necessarily have utilities in them. So what we're thinking on those areas is to have some neighborhood meetings. We were talking about that with the Sunset and Geezy area when they had objections, but then COVID came and we shut everything down, and then we didn't do that. So, but I've kind of outlined the different areas on the map. They aren't corresponded numerically, but I did, in my memo, I outlined the process that we would be following for each of these remaining areas. So some of these are kind of broken up still, so we wouldn't have neighborhood meetings for those, but we would send out the letters. I do field phone calls. Whenever we get these letters out, I personally handle all the phone calls for these things. Whenever anybody has a question, I try to explain to them what's going on, why we're doing it. When we had the last annexation, all those folks that came here to the council meeting, I had spoke to each one of those people individually. So I think they just wanted to, explain, that they were objecting to it. But I did speak to each and every one of those folks when they had objections to it. So in summary, I think what we would like to do is continue with the program with some additional updates with the letters that are sent out, and then kind of go through the different areas that we've outlined here. All but the last 4 on the list are ones that we have planned to move ahead with. The ones that we had not yet would be Area 1, which is the Schumacher area. That was not part of the original areas that we were looking. That's off of Deer Path Road. The other areas are on South Deer Path, which is on the other side of Deer Path. Those would be in the Ward 7 area. There's about 3 or 4 homes in there that are now surrounded because of the annexation of the NICOR right-of-way in parts. Then the next one would be the NICOR right-of-way. Remember, we annexed some roadway segments across the right-of-way, the NICOR right-of-way. That's created a situation we've surrounded those parts of the NICOR right-of-way, so we would propose to annex those remaining pieces. And then last is Sunnyside, and from our discussions we've had with various other departments and the mayor and such, we would not recommend proceeding with that at this time. There are a lot of service issues with that area, very difficult to get into, provide emergency services. Fire district does provide service through our fire department, but we think we need to have some more discussion about infrastructure improvement at that area before we would actually annex that area. But we are recommending to proceed with the remaining areas, including having some neighborhood meetings with some of these more contiguous areas. And that's kind of our thought process on it at this point.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on this tonight? I know that this has been something that over the time I've been on the city council, and especially since Scott's come on board, that we really have gone after a lot of these little spots. And, we see it almost every month on cow meetings and then city council with a lot of the vacations, the other things that we've been doing to try to get, all the property in the right classifications, the right spots, and things that aren't annexed in, to try to make all this as seamless as possible from one border to the other. And, that's something that when I first got on the council, there was a lot more of these. I mean, if you saw the map from 2003 to what it is now, it's a lot different. I still have some township directly behind me and directly to the west of where I live, so it is still there, and that's something that we need to solve, need to, finish all these up. Mark, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Scott, have we ever done any comps to prove, because it's one of the things that's not listed here, that a house within the city limits is more valuable than a house that is not?
We have not done any specific comparables. It's kind of hard to, make that determination. The best that we can say is, the property tax difference is about a 4% increase, which is, when I've looked at a lot of these, homes after the fact, it's pretty much held up. Some have been 5%, but most of them have been about 4% increase in property taxes. So it's also been hard to tell with the market, the way the market is going. Everything is going up price-wise for homes. So it's kind of hard to gauge that a little bit. So.
Yeah, I'm just curious that I wonder if, speaking to realtors or anything, if there's actually a value. Because if I go to sell my house, if I'm annexed, then 5 years later I go to sell my house and I'm getting more value for it because of the fact that I'm in the city of Batavia rather than unincorporated. I think that'd be an interesting thing if that's something that we can say is a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, we can look into it and see if there's a way we can empirically, make that determination. Obviously, the fact that you'd have the ability, even if you don't have them, to get water, sewer, and electric, that saves you from, your own maintenance and costs for doing that. So there's a benefit to having city utilities, obviously.
Yep, thanks.
Okay. Nick, go ahead.
I know a few of these upcoming are in my area, so when you do the neighborhood watches or meetings, what's the turnout typically?
Well, we haven't actually had any official ones yet, but the one that we were going to have, the Sunset Geezy area, I anticipated we would have had at least half of the residents in that one come to the meeting. So my opinion is that I would like to invite the ward alderman that would be for that area.
I was going to suggest.
Just so they can, see the residents, explain things to them, and understand what
lose a
their
few
concerns
votes.
may be. So don't worry, I'll be knocking on your door, making sure you come to the meeting. That was my plan, is to have the ward alderman come.
Voting anyway.
Right, they weren't, but they will once they get in.
And again, with COVID, depending on what happens, we'll have to figure out whether it's going to be in person or virtual or hybrid or what we're going to have to do with it. So it'll be kind of a case by case.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Sarah, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how this is going to work with, how is the Winding Creek conversation going, and is that area going to be annexed when that development is built?
Yes, that is, yeah, we're going through the final engineering on that right now. They submitted for final engineering. Comment letter, I think, is going out either today or tomorrow on that. So they are still moving ahead. I think they would like to close on the property and annex it by March.
Okay.
So that's coming.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. No other comments on this? We'll move on to the next one.
Thank you.
Next is item number 10, which is ordinance 2204, approving a plat of vacation for Bluebell Lane turnaround.
We think this is the last one for now. We've been vacating these little stubs and other little excess rights of way. I can't guarantee it'll be the very last one, because I think once we start annexing some areas, there's a couple of new ones that we'll inherit. But this is the last one that's on our current agenda right now. So this would vacate the remnant parts of Bluebell Lane right-of-way, which isn't needed anymore since we put a cul-de-sac in when the Rose Hollow subdivision went in. So this is kind of the last two excess pieces that are necessary to dispose of.
Anybody have any questions? Nick?
I'm just curious, is this strictly a paper thing, or is there any, like, for that little piece, they pay an extra $5 a year in taxes, or?
It's a minimal amount, if anything. It adds to their land area, so when the assessor calculates land area, they'll be adding to that. But it's probably a minimal amount that's accessible to them. I've looked to try and see if you can figure out empirically exactly how it is, but with taxes changing every year and stuff, it's hard. It does help them in some cases because of the fact that it is no longer a right-of-way and it's their property, so that changes their setback line. So that actually can help them if they were going to put an addition on. In some cases, these little hammerheads are almost right up to their front of the home. So this actually helps them with future improvement projects.
The one side of this is an entire driveway, you know, a two-lane driveway that comes in on this.
Yeah.
And the other side is just a corner of a lot.
Right.
Now.
Yeah, in some cases, the hammerheads were left, and the people used them as a driveway later on. So that's what's happened in a couple of
Right.
places.
Okay.
Okay, if no other questions, I will make the motion that we recommend to council, ordinance 2204, approving a plat of vacation for Bluebell Lane turnaround.
Second.
Okay, motion by Wolf, second by Solfa. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chansett, absent, and Sofa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you. Up next is item number 11, which is Resolution 22-10-R, authorizing transfer of property to the Batavia Park District for the bike path north of Gore Street.
Yeah, so if you recall, a couple months ago, we did dedicate part of that area as Massey View, which is the area that is the bike path that's adjacent to the Oak Terrace Mobile Home Park. And this is the remaining part that the city owns. So we still own the bike path up to the Forest Preserve path, which is just south of Fabian Parkway. So we've had some discussions with the Park District about taking that over. They've agreed that, you know, they would be agreeable to doing that. They have been maintaining it already anyway, so it's kind of natural, you know, change for that. The only thing we did in this is that part of it we wanted to reserve for a potential future dedication of Massey View Extension if properties to the north develop in the future. We don't know that that's going to happen, but we just are reserving the right in this to be able to do that up to the Enticing Cuisine property. After that, those properties can develop their own internal access. Some of those other properties have difficulty having access because of the topography and the width of them and everything else. So Park District has been agreeable to this. It passed a resolution requesting the transfer, which is required under state law. And so the passage of this resolution would allow us to sign the deed and then transfer that land over to the Park District.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I know we've been doing a lot of this to try to cooperate back and forth with Park District and with us to get parking spaces that are adjacent to other things that belong to the city or belong to the Park District, so that way we're just maintaining our own property, not maintaining somebody else's property and then have to have all these intergovernmental agreements to do all that. It's better, I think, just to split those up, separate them, and I think this is another one of those things that is a good idea. Okay, if no other comments, I will make the motion that we recommend to council Resolution 22-10-R, authorizing the transfer of property to the Batavia Park District.
Second.
Second, Barron.
Okay, motion by Wolf, second by Barron. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chansett, absent, and Sofa.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you. Up next is item number 12, which is discussion on parking requirements in zoning code requests to revisit.
Thank you. This has been requested for us to revisit the parking changes that we had recently adopted in September. There were some questions about whether we should have parking minimums, not just in the downtown, but, you know, throughout the city. So we had been asked to put this on an agenda for the discussion. Staff does not feel at this point in time that we should make changes to this. I think what we would be looking for is some additional time to digest the changes that we just made, instead of, making further changes to the parking ordinances, and then come back to you probably, in a year or so and say, let's see how things are working, and if they aren't working, then let's talk about it again and see if we can, if there's additional changes that are necessary. Our concern is that we really don't have any other communities that have done this in Illinois. Downtowns are one thing. It's a little bit easier because you do have a lot of public parking that's available, but in areas such as Randall Road or industrial parks, you really don't have any other place to put parking. I think the issue is that once you change some of this, it's really hard to, as I've said in the memo, unring the bell and restore parking if you find that there's a demand for it. The ITE, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, does a regular study of different types of land use and whether or not they have to have certain amount of parking spaces and trips that are generated from them. And so that's the basis of doing traffic studies. So based on the information that they still provide, a lot of these uses still are going to require parking for, who knows how long. Now, is that going to change over time? Probably. If we ever have self-driving cars, or if we have other ways to provide access into these facilities, people take public transit more, that would be one thing. But a lot of these towns that do have no parking minimums either are downtowns, or they have a very robust transit system that allows for the ability for people to get to and from places in those kind of situations. So our recommendation at this point is to, let it sit for a little while, and then perhaps come back in a year and then have another conversation about it at that point in time and see if there's additional thoughts or consideration for that.
Okay, I see, Mark, you have your hand up already. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to go because maybe Abby will convince me again because she's done a good job of that in the past. Scott, I read through the memo and I really appreciate the points that were made in the memo. Definitely things that I wasn't necessarily considering, and then looking at some of the changes that have been done in some of those gigantic parking lots, especially, or some even within Batavia and some in other neighboring cities. So that got me thinking about it, because I also thought about the fact that I don't know if it's really going to make a difference now, because I can't think of anywhere else that there's a development for us that's empty on Randall that we'd be taking advantage of this unless something happens with Mooseheart in the coming years. So for now, I think, like I said, unless Abby can convince me otherwise, I think I understand where you're coming from, and it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I will admit that even at Target, there's times that I drive to Target and you're parked way back in the parking lot. It's quite full, to be honest. So I don't know. I will stop. Like I said, I'm in favor of what you're saying right now, and we'll see if Abby can convince me otherwise, because I'm pretty sure she has her hand up.
Are you nodding yes? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for putting this together and for bringing it back to us. I also agree, you make some valid points here, and to Mark's point too, that, nothing's going to change significantly one way or another, whether we do anything different or we don't. I don't know what would change in a year that we'd have much to compare it to either. I think if we were to eliminate parking minimums across the board, across the city, which I think there's probably a compromise between what we have in that scenario that we could also discuss some finer points tonight, that given the rate of development, I think it would probably be 50, 100 years before we fully eliminate parking in those areas as it's written in here. And I don't think, I don't know, that's not necessarily something that I'm afraid of, the slow change that would occur. Removing parking minimums comes up in case studies that I read of cities trying different things to improve livability and sustainability and economic resilience. And so when I think about the vision that we have for Batavia in 100 years or in 50 years, those are the things that I'm striving for. I mean, I don't know if we have one cohesive vision here on City Council on what we're trying to strive for, but this alone isn't going to get us there, but this is a piece of it that we're not going to necessarily get a more sustainable, a more resilient, a more equitable, or a more livable quality, higher quality of life without a piece like this. So I don't see the harm in changing it, either knowing how slowly development goes and knowing that it's still going to be market driven, that we're not putting a parking maximum on there. So somebody isn't going to put a target size building probably and not put any parking in, because that's not, to your point, that's not the world that we live in right now. It's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario too, that cities that have really robust transit systems have them because they have really good concentrations of people and amenities. We can't have that level of concentration of people or amenities because we have codes like this on our books. We'll never get there. So we either have to remove the codes from their books and build up so that we can have transit, or we never will, So we can't use it as a reason that we can't do this is because we don't have transit. Like, we have to intervene somewhere. And so it's just a big picture 100-year discussion. Do we want, I would love to see us someday be serviced by transit and have, the type of amenities and services that people can access by foot or by biking. And I don't know, Mark, did I get you?
I think long run, it would be awesome if we could have transit, let's bring back the streetcar that used to be here and expand it. I think that'd be fascinating to see that. And that is like a 50-year plan. And maybe these things fill in and then it's not a big deal over 50 years. We need to talk about the cohesiveness. What are we trying to do? And what is that vision? And I know we've talked about that in the last few weeks. I still have a vision that South River Avenue isn't what it is right now. New banquet facility going down there, but it's a banquet facility surrounded by a lot of industrial. And that's an area that if we were to go and do something where we do start, hey, we're taking those parking minimums and we're redeveloping an entire area, well, that's a place that we could certainly start if we were to rezone that whole area. So, I think there's so much here that we could do in the long run. We do need to think in that 50-year plan.
Scott?
Yeah, just to jump on what Mark was saying also is that I did put together kind of a concept of how we could put a streetcar down Route 31. So I did. Yeah. I was kind of like looking at that as, with the road diet, if we end up getting the road diet, is that something that we could also incorporate? I think I shared it with Laura and Gary too, just, as I try and come up with different ideas for things too, so.
Yeah, I think light rail fits great up above the bike paths. You've got the right-of-way already, you've got the electric lines right there, and you could run it from Aurora to Elgin like it used to be.
And that's a thought, is can you, if you could run it between Aurora and Elgin, that would certainly help,
Yep.
a lot of that.
You keep the traffic downtown, you keep the pedestrians off the light rail downtown, so that way they use the downtowns.
Right. But I think the other thing I was going to mention is, I think we have a process in our code right now to address these types of situations. Most of the time, you're going to have a subdivision or a planned development or some type of zoning relief. So, it's similar to what's going to happen with Culvers. They would have to have some type of zoning relief no matter what. So adding in, say, a parking variance or a reduction in the number of parking spaces, that's really not adding any difficulty or process to what's going on. So, we look at these things, right away, when we saw what was proposed for the old TGI Fridays site, we said that makes a lot of sense. There's a huge parking lot there. It's not needed for anything. So let's see if we can reduce it. We know we've had Kohl's has talked about that. The ownership of Kohl's has talked about that at some point, about building some outlots. If they do come in with it, we'll certainly, be supportive of that, because they have much more parking than they need right now as well, so.
Right, and I think when you look at the way that commercial and retail has gone in those style buildings that are out there, they will, I think, reuse it. It's happened in many places up and down Randall Road already, and I think we can facilitate that when we get to that point, and also look forward to, 20 or 50 years from now, when the neighborhoods move closer to that or get to the point where they will be accessing those in different ways than just the cars we're driving there today. I mean, it's going to take time, but it'll happen. Keenan?
I was gonna say, if we already know that it's going this way, why don't we just do it?
Well, my argument against it is that we aren't there, and that we may be a competitive disadvantage if we do that right now, because you still have a demand for parking. People still are gonna need to go to Target. I mean, it's a situation that, if you start restricting that, then you may be scaring away businesses, you may be scaring away patrons from our areas if you do that.
But wouldn't that be up to, like, say, Target? They know what their parking is going to be like. So if they know they need that lot, they're not gonna sell it to an outlot now. They're gonna keep it. But like Kohl's doesn't need it, so they would go ahead and develop that outlot, which would bring more people to that area.
Right.
That's why I was saying,
Our ordinances right now wouldn't prohibit that. They can still, just like what's going to happen on, the Culver's property across the street at Douglas, that's going to be the same, it'd be the same thing. They'd have to come in and ask if it was a different thing than what our ordinance today requires for parking. And then that's up to us to approve that.
And I would argue Kohl's probably has more parking than what our ordinance allows now with our parking maximum we just imposed. So it would be easy for somebody to come in and say, okay, Kohl's, if you only have to have 300 parking spaces and you have 450, that 150 space is easily expendable because it's more than what they're allowed to have anyway under the current code. It's non-conforming, so they can continue, but that would be a very easy situation for somebody to come in and say, okay, I want to build an outlot here, and we would say, okay, makes sense.
so we've just got kind of basically they're asking for a variance for that.
They may not have to ask
If
for
they don't,
variance.
but if they
need
to,
Yeah, they
would.
may have more parking than they need to have, so they may not need a variance for that because of that.
So we're just asking them to spend money instead of just having them do it.
Well, I mean, you have to still spend money to divide the lot, do the engineering, develop the layout of the revised parking lot and stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that's gonna have to happen anyway. So there's an entitlement process that's gonna be required no matter what.
Laura?
Also consider the future marketability of buildings, particularly in our industrial area, that there will be developers who come in with a specific user who says, I don't have any employees in this building, I've got a bunch of computers in this building that require very little on-site employees, and so I don't want to build but for the parking spaces that I need. Should, that business have to go somewhere in the future. Of course, you'd want to have something that's marketable, but oftentimes people go in there with the idea that they're going to be there forever. Nothing bad is going to happen in their industry that causes them to close earlier than expected. If they don't have sufficient parking for other uses, then it very much limits what that building can be in the future.
And one of the other things that's in our zoning code already is it does allow for land banking in certain uses, and, we can look at, maybe we should expand that a little bit more. But it does allow for land banking in case they, want to build a data center, and they said, well, I don't need 100 parking spaces, I only need 6. So we can look at that and say, okay, that makes sense, but make sure you reserve the area in case this changes into a gymnastics facility where you do need a lot of parking, so that they can build it later on if it's necessary.
Abby?
So I think one of the things that we could talk about is, eliminating industrial from the ordinance and saying this applies to everything but industrial. Looking at size of properties, I've seen that in other examples of cities that have done this, where they say properties, and I was thinking of you, Mark, 10,000 square feet and up, so an Aldi size and up would be exempt from the parking minimums. But something like a Culver's and something like Fridays, that size businesses would not have had to go through the variance process, because I think the ease of getting a variance is probably pretty subjective from what I've heard out in the world. It seems really easy for some and it's very difficult for others to get to achieve. And so I guess, and to Keenan's point too, about the way the trends that we see, it's going to take 50 years to take effect. Are there examples out there in the world that have done this? And I've seen examples that date back to at least 10 years ago that these have been enacted. Are there any cities that have had any negative case studies that we can find? And what are the negative data points that they're reporting? What are the quality of life, economic, or sustainability downsides? Because those are the things that I'm trying to achieve with my time sitting here, is improving those things. So if there's an argument to be made that having more parking degrades any of those, then sure, I'll change my mind. But I haven't heard them yet.
Okay, we can research that.
And I think this is a good discussion for us to have, and I think one of the things that I thought about as I was reading through Scott's memo was, how many times have we heard that, somebody wants to build something out in an area where there was a parking lot, or build something, and the issue that stops them from going in is the parking, the need for a parking field, or the need to have or ask for more parking. And I don't know, I can't think of but a few that I could ever think of that we've ever talked about at the committee or the council level. So, I know that that's from the realistic standpoint of what's happening in community development. I don't think that that's a deterrent to developing, outlots or those areas. And I know the place that we've discussed it many times is out in the industrial park, when we do get a user that comes in and says, I'm an automated facility, I've got 6 machines and I need a person at each machine to run them, and 2 salesmen to come in and somebody in the office. That's all they need. But the next user that goes in that building, they have a totally different process, and they got 35 employees that are there in 3 shifts a day. So those are the types of things I think we have to think about, and I think it's right. I think if we do decide to change that, we do need to exempt, or we do need to change how that applies to the industrial or even light industrial areas.
Yeah, and I think with our land banking ordinance, it does allow for some of that now. Where if it is a user that is not a parking intensive user, they can say, realistically, we don't need that many parking spaces, then we can grant that. We did that with Suncast Edition, actually, because they, were required to have more parking. We land banked a lot of their parking spaces, and now actually they're coming back to build a lot of that parking because they're finding that there's a demand. They were busing people in from other off-site areas, but they're finding that their employees want to drive to get to the facility. They don't want to take the bus. So, they're actually starting to build some of their additional parking that we land banked originally. So, but we can certainly, do a little bit of research on that and see, about the quality of life thing, and see what other impacts, have been out there with any of these other ordinances, if there have been, so.
I think of all the additions since I've been on city council, all the work and all the additions Menards has done to their building. Their parking field didn't get any bigger.
Right. They were actually going to take out another parking lot, actually, as part of this last project. They decided not to, but they were going to take one out, so.
So I look at that and I think that, to me, that's where we're getting a little bit more density. I don't know that it makes it any easier for pedestrians to get to or to utilize, but just by the nature of the business that's there, I can guarantee you, come the middle of the spring, that parking lot's gonna be loaded out there now. It will be full. Does anybody online have any comments on this?
No one online at this time.
Alan?
Nick?
Just based on the conversation, I was going to be quiet because I agreed with everything, but the more I listen, the more, maybe this should bring up another conversation, and it's not about recodifying parking requirements, but looking at the variance process and educating any developers that come to town about what their options are, because like Abby said, the perception or the response I've heard from people have been all over the board, from it's not possible, that was the worst process ever, then it was great, so how do we get that more consistent to this side and let developers and those coming to town know, that's not necessarily what you have to do. There are options here, so.
It is, and realize that we do explain what the variance process is, And through the development review process that we have, we do let developers know whether that is something that we would anticipate that, whether staff supports that variance or whether staff does not support that variance. So I imagine in cases where staff does not support the variance that they are requesting, that they may have a negative impression of the process for that, because we wouldn't necessarily recommend any, detraction from the standards that we've put there because they're there for a reason. But if there are, if they're making accommodations for that elsewhere, like for instance, I think that there was one industrial building that got built that didn't want to have as many islands in the middle, but they decided they'd build a rain garden adjacent to their parking area. Well, fine, that's a variance that we would be happy to, bring to you with a positive recommendation from staff.
And I think it also depends to a certain extent on how familiar and how sophisticated the applicant is. I mean, if you have somebody that's, MIF or, a Tangway Burke and Stratton or whatever that has done a lot of this stuff, they're used to going through the variance process. But if you have a mom and pop place that, is kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing and I can't believe I have to do this, you're going to find that a lot of those folks are going to have more of a negative opinion about it because they don't understand the process and how it all works. We do our best to try and explain it to them and walk them through the process, but, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be happy about having to go through the variance process too. But we can always, look at the process and see what we can do to improve it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think that that's something that, as we start to do what I'll call is infill of Randall Road out there and try to use up some of that space to provide things that make sense to be out there, we need to be able to encourage that. And if we need to, look at how some of the processes we have in community development, the perception might be there that it's difficult because people have never been through it, or maybe we have to change some of the processes we have. So maybe it is a good thing for us to look at some of that and make those changes. I mean, we just talked about doing that, with annexations, because that is something that, that's a very interesting thing for people to have to go through had they never gone through anything like that. So I think this, again, could be something that, maybe we do need to take a step back and look at it and say, is it just the process is that a real deterrent, or is that a problem, or is that something that, we just need to tweak so that we make it easier for people to do it and easier to understand it?
And we're constantly looking at, the code. The text amendments, we generate things that come from the council, from the plan commission, from staff. And so we look at, things on a regular basis. We've got kind of a list of other things that we're going to be coming back with to the plan commission for text amendments for things that, in some cases, they make things harder. Sometimes a lot of times they make things easier because we just say, this is not making sense. Let's try and make the change. So, we do look at all this to try and, see if it makes sense or if we should make some modifications to the code because of that.
Abby?
I think, Laura, you brought up a lot of things that are reasons why I would support something like this, is that I think having more mom and pop, type developers, homegrown, small business type people that want to build up their own thing that are not familiar, would be deterred by the current code and by, you, as staff has said, they don't support this. So if somebody came and said, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and it does not adhere to our current parking minimums, then we aren't going to hear about it because they aren't going to be.
It has nothing to do with whether they're mom and pop. Because a mom and pop could come with a perfectly appropriate proposal.
But you said if staff doesn't support the variance, then it doesn't, then it gets.
No, all we do is advise them of what our opinion is going to be on it. We're not the final arbiters of that.
No.
The plan commission, the council is the final decision makers on that. So, all we can do is say we would or would not support it and give our reasons. They have to meet certain standards for variances, or if it's a plan development, it's different. It's actually easier to do a plan development. And then it goes through the process of the plan commission, the council. So
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that it doesn't go forward.
Right.
We just give
That's their right to
because
go
we
forward.
write the memos that come to you to say, we've reviewed this and based on the staff's recommendation in their area of expertise, this is what we would recommend, but you're free to grant it or not grant it, and that happens.
Right, and we've been overruled, before on
Mhm.
things. Staff
That's fine.
didn't recommend the drive-through up the hill here, and, it was approved, and it worked out okay for everybody, so.
Well, and then something you
There's-
did too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's interesting just listening, because here, I'm sure somebody in walking in, your verbiage alone is different. When you tell somebody, we don't support it, but you can do this, what do they hear?
We tell them that. I mean, we don't say that we're the final ones to say that.
Right,
All
so
all we can say is that, we're staff, we make a recommendation to the plan commission and the council. If it's your right to move ahead, and, if you wish to, see if you can, get there, convince them that otherwise, they have absolutely every right. We never say, we're not taking you to the plan commission, no, we don't do
Right.
that, that's,
And
we
the
have
other
no
thing
right
that
to
we
do that.
do is offer the expertise to try to find other solutions that meet their needs
Yeah.
too. And so to say, have you thought about trying to do it this different way and work through alternative solutions that do meet the code so that they don't even have to ask for a variance,
Right.
which is
I've-
the easiest process of all.
I've redesigned sites for numerous people, whether it's subdivisions or site plans for projects, to say,
Right.
look, if you just change this and change that, you won't have to get a variance, or you can get it through, much easier this way. I've personally done it many times.
I didn't mean to
Oh, no.
say that. I meant, we had a miscommunication right here. I can't imagine what somebody who's scared and putting their life savings on the line is
Right.
not clear on some of this stuff. There's got to be some of that.
We are very much
so-
hand-holding
Yes.
in those situations. We meet people where they're at. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have never gone through the process of setting up. I'll give a perfect example, is Sturdy Shelter Brewing. He has never purchased a building to put a business in. This is his first foray into owning his own business and hiring professionals to put together architectural plans and such. And he had to go through the variance process as well, because he had to ask permission from Public Works for a lowering of the height of that. And we worked with him and supported that, as we worked with the utility departments to say, is that something that you guys could live with if that's 1.5 feet shorter than it's supposed to be? And so that's a prime example of us working with the type of, I don't want to call him like less experienced in development.
And-
He's very experienced in what he does, but in terms of going through the entitlement process.
Right. Oh, yeah.
That's 100% new to him, and he was very nervous about going through that. But I think if you talk to him, I think that he would give us a good marks on being there for him and making sure that we help him every step of the way.
Well, and that wasn't his only site, too. We worked with him on several other sites.
yeah,
When he
that's
was
right.
looking, he had been looking for quite a while at different sites. He had some initial contracts with some other sites. So he was like looking at different areas, too, before this. So this was like his third or fourth site that he finally landed on. So this, we were talking to him and meeting with him. Anthony, I went with him probably, 5 years ago now, or whatever it was initially. So, I mean, it was, we worked with them to try and find a site, and it's just, sometimes it's one of those things where you have to help out the people that aren't that experienced or understand the process, or, even trying to find a site. And that's kind of what we do. And Shannon now being here is certainly helping us out with that as well.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up, I was going to bring it up another, but what's the timeline? What's happening with that?
With Sturdy
Brewery.
Shelter?
Yeah.
It's in the permit review process right now. We've reviewed it, given them initial comments, and we're waiting for them actually to respond to the last set of
He
comments.
submitted his plans in November, I believe.
Yeah, we're waiting for his architect to get back to us with the revisions. So we're close, it's just there's a few things that still have to be done, so.
Did he find, was there an extra architect sitting in the building?
Kluber wouldn't leave.
I was going to say one more thing to your comment, your example about Menards taking over part of their parking lot, and how, it's not necessarily better from a pedestrian's point of view, but it's great from an economic point of view for us, because that section of Menards having product is a lot more productive use, and for our tax base, and, trying to uphold our city services with the land that we have. I mean, I see us as a steward of the land between our borders far more than our tax dollars, like trying to make the most productive use of the square footage that we have. That's such a better use of square footage than a parking lot that probably sat empty 85% of the time. And so to think about it that way, I'm not always pedestrian motivated. It's sometimes the economic aspect as well, and trying to keep our city budget correct.
Okay. So I think we'll
We'll keep an eye on things, and we'll
maybe come back and revisit this in
Yeah.
6 months and talk about it again and see where we're at with what's going on Randall Road, what kind of information you find about positives, negatives of having or not having the minimums. So that way we can, cite some of that and try to see if we want to really make a decision, or do we want to kind of let it ride for now.
What was
Absolutely.
the engineering standard you mentioned in your opening?
ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers. They have two different documents. It's a trip generation manual and a parking generation manual.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Scott. And up next is item number 13, which is Resolution 22-12-R, authorizing purchase of 2 police department patrol vehicles for $68,356. Alderman Rosado, this is yours.
Yes. Police Department is looking to purchase 2 2022 Ford utility police vehicles for the patrol division. The purchase will be made through the Northwest Conference Suburban Purchasing Co-op. The 2022 budget includes $89,450 for the purchase of these 2 vehicles. There are some extra costs on that, and that is the upfit charge, which is stripping the vehicles and changing over all the communications equipment and the striping. The only question I have on this is that upcharge and striping, was that included in the budget as well with the $89,450?
Yeah, so the vehicles that we're looking to purchase, the total purchase price for the 2 vehicles is right around $68,000. Then when you combine that with the upfit charges and the striping packages, the total price will still come in under budget on that $89,450 number.
Yes, and that's fantastic. We're going to be $4,600 below budget. That's great. Any discussion?
I do have a question, and I'm sorry I didn't get to get this to the police department beforehand. I was just curious. I didn't realize that the Explorer was available as a hybrid. In the stock, I see that it's like a $2,700 discount to get one that's not. Has the department thought about even just trying one vehicle out to see how much fuel that saves to have that as a patrol vehicle with the hybrid?
So, we have discussed it. One of the primary issues that we have with the hybrid is the increased cost for relatively low upside. I know the last time that we looked into it, it was approximately 3 miles per gallon of improved performance, which was relatively minor given the increased cost. I can say the cost between the hybrid and the gasoline model has kind of started to shrink. I think as it continues to shrink, it's definitely something that we're open to exploring in the future.
Yeah, and I guess one of my questions was, especially too, if we get to a command vehicle or something else that may not see, the constant drive time, where it may actually be a better, dollar and cents value to it to get, the cost per mile down. I was pretty surprised to see it under $3,000 difference between the 2 vehicles. Because I know in the past when we've looked at that, or we've talked about it with some public works vehicles and stuff, it's been $6,000-7,000 on some of the vehicles we've looked at. The differences, so for it to be that low, I would think over 100,000 miles or more usage on the vehicle, that would probably work out.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, starting dipping our toes into the hybrid platform a good place to start would be our administrative fleet, where we don't have all of the electronic components and things that we need to draw power on that battery from. So that's definitely something that we can consider in the future when we're looking. These two vehicles in particular are going to be replacing vehicles within the patrol fleet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Alderman Vogelsinger.
Yeah. How long do you typically keep these vehicles?
So we typically keep the vehicles 3 to 4 years in the marked patrol unit. And then what we'll be doing with these vehicles is actually we have some older vehicles in the patrol fleet that will be cycled out, and we're going to extend their service life by moving them into the administrative fleet. So the stripes will be removed, but we'll still continue to use those vehicles for a number of years until we don't have any more use for them.
Got it. So possibly in 3 to 4 years when you go to replace these, the hybrid or even EV market might be more reasonable?
Yeah, potentially. Like I said, I think every year that the prices, kind of shrink just a little bit and get to an area where we're starting to feel more comfortable. The other thing that I would say about that is these, we're replacing vehicles on an annual basis as part of our ongoing fleet replacement schedule. So we don't need to necessarily wait 3 years for this opportunity to come again. This is definitely something that we continue to talk about. But at this point, given, the relatively low upside with regards to fuel efficiency, and then the difference in the sticker price, those are generally the primary reasons.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fantastic. Anybody else? Okay, great. Then I would like to make a motion to move to City Council Resolution 2212R, authorizing the purchase of two police department patrol vehicles for $68,356.
Second. Okay, motion by Rosado, second by Cerrone. Roll call, please.
Rosado,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chanzit, absent, Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
Ayasi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
Ewer,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
and Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you. Now tonight's marquee discussion of the CEJA energy legislation and revisions to the City of Batavia self-generation policies and regulations.
Hearing that term at marquee.
I did.
As part of the CEJA legislation that was passed by the state of Illinois last fall, there's a new section that deals with municipal self-generation. And last Friday, I just produced a memo for City Council to hopefully help familiarize you with the section of the legislation. I included a copy of the language within that legislation. Next week, my hope is to bring a first draft of a net metering self-generation policy to you. That policy, I would imagine, will take a few weeks, a few sessions of COW to work through. Once there's consensus on the language within that policy, then we can come back with a formal resolution for council to adopt that policy. The guidelines within that policy will then drive the ordinance revisions, and we can codify the revisions into an ordinance form. And then parallel to that, we're also going to be working on an interconnection agreement, which is more of the technical side of making the connections to our grid. So those three pieces, a policy, an ordinance, and an interconnection agreement, are all going to kind of work their way through committee and council, all by mid-March, and then they'll have to be approved per the state law. So that's tonight was just to really get the memo into your hands so you have the language of the legislation, which is going to drive the other items here over the next several weeks.
Anybody have any questions? I think this is, again, one of the things that, we've kind of known was coming. we've talked about it a little bit on how we were gonna handle generation and, you know, the interconnection agreement. Didn't we approve something last year that was,
A few years back.
And we actually approved the net metering ordinance in 2018, and this will supersede that ordinance.
right, and maybe I'm wrong, but I thought we approved something that was about the metering, or is it notification? It was something to do with our fire departments and
So that.
The
yeah, that was
shut-offs
on the
and-
building department
and building.
code side.
That was right, okay.
Yes.
That's what I'm thinking of, but,
Yep.
you know, this is all something that I think we need to make sure we're out in front of this, even though we're being forced to do this by the state, but I think it's something that's very important. And I think it's also something that we're gonna have to deal with more and more frequently in the next couple of years.
So the Illinois Municipal Utility Association, of which we are a member, they have spent, since the legislation passed until literally the end of last year, they spent several months developing model policies, which have now been given to us. That's the framework from which we're working. I've taken the model policy and made it Batavia specific, because they're writing a policy for 50 communities, and we needed to really make it for us. So that's where I'll come back with next week.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Gary?
We also have a number of people who are online, and if any one of them would like to make a comment, if you raise your hand. I don't see any.
Abby, I see your hand.
Did we have something in our current ordinance about net metering? Was it up to, what's our current net metering policy? I can't remember.
Our current net metering ordinance, if you were going to the total load, system load, yeah, that's 2%, and that's
I remember-
common throughout really all municipalities, and we're all dropping that requirement because that's no longer in compliance with the law.
Right.
Well, that was, the 2% was for just how much we would allow, like, right?
Overall system load.
Overall system load, but then net metering, did we also have a cap on that separate? Like, we would not do the net metering up to a certain dollar amount, or?
No, so under the current ordinance, residents can carry kilowatt hour credits from month to month up to a year. After a year, they roll off.
Okay.
We don't have any customers right now who are carrying them that long. I think our longest customer is 10 or 11 months. We have yet to have a customer that has lost credits through that.
And is anything changing with CEJA about net metering?
Yeah, it's no longer, it's the CEJA legislation, it's no longer about kilowatt hours, it's now gonna be about dollars and cents.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a dollar and cents bill to a customer every month, and then a dollar and cents credit to a customer every month. And it'll be a month-by-month reconciliation.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a monthly reconciliation, I should say.
Did I see Sarah, did you have your hand up, or did you decide not?
Yeah, my question was answered though, so thank you.
All right,
All right, Marky?
Yep. All right, thank you.
Boy, okay, after
Good.
that.
And now we're moving on to project status.
I'll follow up the marquee item.
Yeah,
I just have an update on some of our projects that are ongoing. We're updating our bike and walking plan for the city, and the survey is still open. And if you would like to respond to that survey, you can find a link to it on our homepage. But I wanted to let everyone know that we've planned our winter community engagement meetings for the walking and bike plan, and they will be virtual due to the current positivity rate for COVID in our area. They'll be held on February 23rd, and we're going to host 2 meetings. The first one will be from 11 o'clock a.m. to 12:30 a.m. I'm sorry, 11 o'clock a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And the other one is from 7 o'clock p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And again, you can find links to how to register for those on the city's website. In Community and Economic Development, Plan Commission held their meeting on January 19th, and they approved a design review for an electronic message center that's going to be at the new Douglas Flooring Store on Randall Road. That's in the same area where our new Culvers will go. And Culvers is on the Plan Commission for a conditional use public hearing at the second meeting in February. And we've received a demolition permit for the new movie theater. So they're doing some interior demo work as part of the improvements that they're going to make to the theater. And again, for those that don't know, they hope to be open by the end of the year for the holiday season. We are also receiving a number of inquiries about the First Baptist Church site for development, and we're basically giving them some basic information about that site and letting them know that very soon we'll be issuing a request for proposals with regard to that property as well as other redevelopment sites that we have in the downtown. In Public Works, repairs for the Northeast Distribution Substation switchgear are nearing completion with final testing is underway. And we held our first weekly meeting with Trotter and Associates to discuss the design details for the Phase 2A of the upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, moving into the next phase. And also, staff met with Enterprise Fleet Management. We're discussing potential future purchase of electric vehicles for replacement vehicles in Public Works. Unfortunately, due to parts shortages and whatnot, availability is very limited for those vehicles in 2022, but it never hurts to start these discussions so that we're prepared when it might be more feasible to purchase these vehicles in 2023 or 2024. The last item that I would like to discuss is really something that my predecessor had talked with City Council about, but it's just one of those things that from a priority standpoint, we just kind of never got to, and that is the fact that the city issues permits for raffles, and so does the county, and our rules are nearly identical. I really, there really is no value added to the city also issuing those permits. It's a lot of busy work. We don't collect a lot of revenue from it. I would propose that we just punt that to the county as their domain to regulate. I contacted them. They're fine with that. There's a process that we have to go through to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with them to formally give our power to regulate that to them, but it's something that they do all the time. So as long as you give me, the authority to go ahead with that, I'll bring that back to you in short order.
I like the idea.
Yeah.
And take it off of our clerk's plate.
What department handles that? And who
The
does it?
clerk handles it.
Clerk
So our
okay.
part-time clerk has to find time
To do that, okay.
process these applications. And there are a number of folks, the VFW, the Rotary Club and the Corvette raffle. There's a number of different raffles that happen throughout the year, and this would really eliminate a lot of busy work, I think.
Do they have to get two permits now? One from the county
Yes.
and one from us?
Yes,
So they have to get both, so.
yeah,
I think that's crazy to duplicate that, so I'm
Exactly.
fine with.
it's redundant.
Figure out what the realities are and you bring us back an ordinance or resolution, and we'll do it.
Yes. Go through the
That's pretty
preparation of
easy.
a resolution and an intergovernmental agreement, and then we'll be done with it. Okay, thank you very much,
Yeah.
and that's all I had, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Just a comment on the trucks or the vehicles for public works for fleets. Don't expect the fleet stuff to come out for at least a year or two
Yeah.
because the electric vehicle manufacturers are all gonna go after what makes profit. And the fleet vehicles are gonna be the lowest thing on the profit, on that totem pole, so they're not gonna go after
Right.
those for a while.
There's
That'll be
such
the
high
last thing that
demand.
really comes online.
Good point,
So that's gonna be real interesting. I only know one person so far that's got a Rivian.
yeah.
And that was just by chance. I think that they won their lottery or
Lottery.
whatever to get their first one out.
Alan, one other thing that came up on that very subject that you just mentioned, I was on a meeting with a bunch of mayors this morning, and it came up that,
Can you use a mic? Yep, so we get, everybody can hear you.
it came up in the meeting that, one thing that, there was a missing component to this whole discussion, it's, once we go electric, where's the motor fuel tax coming from? And the motor fuel tax is a big, big item in maintaining the road system in the state of Illinois. I mean, a huge item. And to take all that revenue away, and so, they're saying, well, the state legislature needs to address this. What kind of new cost are we gonna put on? Because these vehicles, they're still gonna be using all the roads just the way any vehicle that's using gas is using it. So that's gonna be, I think, a big hot question here in the next year or two as they probably debate that one out. It won't be at our level, it'll be the state legislature that'll have to deal with it, but
The
the
things I've
question
heard
is now being asked, I will tell you that.
kicked around about that is it's gonna be similar to what the road use taxes are for trucks. And they're just gonna have to figure out what percentage that they wanna do that at and how they're gonna collect that. So I think that'll be something that'll be real interesting to see how that goes through the legislature, or what really comes out of that.
They'll figure a way, though.
Yeah. Gary?
that.
saw you
History is
way
proven.
Back there, do you have a comment?
I do, just very quickly, because we agree with your assessment that from a pure fleet perspective, say the the state purchasing program, those are gonna be way out in the future because manufacturers do not make much money on the state purchasing program. It's one of the reasons we've been in contact with Enterprise, because Enterprise told us they're like the largest automobile purchaser in the United States besides the federal government. So they are a huge purchaser of automobiles and have that reach to get into those markets. So it's still premature. Even they don't have the ability right now to get the EVs, but they said in another year or 2 or 3, that might be our avenue into getting EVs a lot sooner than through the state purchase process.
Once we get all the production for everything that's in those vehicles in the US,
Right.
then they'll be available in the market. That's what's gonna happen. That I can tell everybody probably for sure. That's gonna happen. And that's when we'll start to see more availability on all that stuff. Okay. Does anybody have any others?
I do.
Go ahead. Tina?
I wanted to, on a future CAL, try to have a discussion more about form-based coding as we are putting out these RFPs for our properties, and also for other properties in our town, so that developers understand and know what we're looking for in our town, so that they're not guessing, so that we can have a more cohesive look in our downtown and a larger town, and have a larger idea of what it is where our master plan, or what is our long-term vision is going to be. Just as we're getting ready, as Shannon's getting ready to have these RFPs put out, and we're getting inquiries on our properties, I would like to have something that these developers can present us, so we're not going back and forth with developers on these things.
Okay.
Scott?
Yeah, so 2 things that we're working parallel. One is the RFP for the properties themselves. So that's going to be, trying to solicit interest from developers as to what they'd like to do with our property or properties. But the other one that we're doing is we're working with a planning consultant to do a downtown plan again, to talk about, what do we want to see with the downtown? How do we want to see things with, different buildings, heights, uses, that type of stuff. So that is one thing, and we can talk to them to, have the form-based code issue talked about as well. Most of the time when you see those, they are in downtowns because when you look at form-based, as opposed to looking at land use, you're looking at form, and that's why they call it form-based. So you're just basically looking at, okay, well, we're okay with what this building looks like, not to use, I'll use a horrible example, but the block of cheese with the One Washington project, that's kind of what they look at in a form-based code. They say, okay, these are performance standards that you want to have for the building, whether it's height, setback, bulk, other things like that, and you're less concerned about what the actual uses are inside the building. So if somebody wants to have residential or other things other than maybe noxious things, you'll restrict that, but you look less at the land use as opposed to the land form. So we can have a look into that.
Abby?
I'll second Keenan on wanting to have that conversation. I think it would be great. I think the downtown redevelopment piece is great too. I think there's undeveloped and there's underdeveloped areas of our entire town that we should at least have a conversation about what form-based code is, so that we're all educated on it and how it can work.
Right.
And again, it lends itself to that visioning conversation about what we want, how we want the public realm to look. And so, yeah, I'm seconding on Keenan and having that conversation here.
Other than boardwalk shops, no one-story buildings in downtown.
Or any.
And that, it's already part of the budget. We had planned it as part of the 2022 budget.
Yeah,
So
I think
it is already planned.
Yeah, I think that discussion will happen with the consultant, if that's
Right.
okay, because I think that's kind of our
But what about
idea
the rest
behind
of
it.
downtown, or the rest of town?
Yeah, you can scope it the way that you want to.
Yeah, and I think that is a good idea. I think it's good for us to start with that downtown, because I think that's where we're really looking to push for redevelopment or development in itself. But I think you're right. I think it needs to be looked at for the entire community. Again, we talked about the river. We want to talk from border to border. Well, if we're going to talk about development or redevelopment, we should probably talk border to border too.
So what's the timeline on that consultant?
We are working with them right now to, we've already had an initial discussion with them about it, and then probably sometime in mid-February, we'll have hopefully a scope of services to bring to you, and then we can have a conversation about, how broad or how narrow you want to have that. So we're kind of asking them to kind of work on, what we want to do, and then, we'll come back to you guys. I mean, we already have the budgeted amounts, and if it ends up being more than that, because we're going to broaden the scope, obviously that'll be a budget item that we'll have to add to it. But I would anticipate we'll probably be back to you guys with some type of a proposed RFP mid to late February.
So similar to
More
the
like
active
mid-Feb-
transportation plan, we would come back to you with the consultant's plan document about exactly what the process would be and what the scope of work would be, so that you would have an opportunity to provide feedback and adjust that however you wanted to make sure that it was the scope that you want.
Thank you, Scott.
And just so you know, most of my experience in the form-based codes is they mostly have been, at least initially in this area, mostly exclusively in the downtown area, because that's more of where you apply them, because it's a little bit different. The way you do it from a zoning standpoint is different than you do your Euclidean zoning. So it's a little bit different in the way you manage it and everything else. Yorkville has it in their downtown. That'll be an interesting one that we could present to you to show exactly how they did theirs. It's a little bit different. I would say that theirs is not exclusively form-based, but it's kind of a hybrid.
Okay. I see, Mark, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Scott, the downtown plan, does that include South River Street?
No, that's going to be a completely separate plan, but that is still also on our plan schedule to do. We have money budgeted for that too, so that'll be a separate plan from that. We did talk to the consultant about that, and they did think that it should be a separate plan also.
Okay. And do you know a time frame on that?
Well, I think that was originally going to be the first one, and then we got into the downtown planning. So I think we're going to try and prioritize the downtown first, and then shortly after that we'll do the other one. They can probably run concurrently to an extent, but that's also going to take a lot of time and effort, because there's going to be a lot of input as well as a steering committee and everything else, and we may have two different consultants doing those depending on how that all works out. So I anticipate that'll probably be more like a late spring start to that project.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anybody else?
I do have another one. I have one more.
Go ahead.
Just a reminder for everybody that's out there, the BPS has their community engagement on February 1st at 6:30 in the Batavia High School. They will be presenting the start of their plan for their total master plan with their 6 schools and other facilities that they'll be developing. It'll be virtual, it'll be in person, it will be changing from Tuesdays and Thursdays, so people can be at I think there's 6 of them, whenever they can make it. But keep a lookout, get on their Facebook page, their main page, because this will be something that will build and help grow the town as we talk about the elementary schools and the high school and the middle school and the community schools that are here.
Thank you. I have one. I've noticed quite a bit of comment online about the garbage service within the community since it's been bought out. And the fact that so much with some things changed a little bit different with some of the contracted service that's with the city, but even much more so, and especially the rates with anybody that's outside the city or business-wise, that's on the business size of it, where if they're unincorporated, and I know we're just talking about township and everything, but unincorporated or businesses, even businesses located within the city, that the rates just went out of sight after Waste Management took over.
A lot of our downtown businesses contract with mostly with other
Right.
independent haulers. They may want to, switch over to those, because I haven't heard anything about escalating rates with those other haulers.
Yeah, and that's been one that's been, bannered around on different sites, that the rates for township lots or, just an individual have just gotten crazy with them. And usually it's a phone call or two. If they can get a hold of anybody for service, then they either drop the rates or they change, or, the two things that I've heard. And the personal experience with business that I'm at, they did not want to change. The rates were just crazy, and they even wanted to charge extra to come and pick the dumpsters up, not just, end the contract. So it was really kind of strange. So I don't know, because a lot of this is unincorporated areas, what kind of pressure or what, contact we have through them. I don't even know who our rep is right now. So, I mean, if you could find that information and get that to me, I'd just like to reach out to them to try to see what's going on with that and why, it seems to be pretty much universal that the rates are just, crazy sky high for somebody that's not part of the city contract.
Yeah, I think what happens a lot of those is those homeowners have to contract with the hauler individually, so there's a little bit more of a cost for them to then go home by home.
Okay.
And you could have one guy that's home, them, Joe and Josie's, you could have another that's Root or whatever. So, it creates more of a service issue for a lot of those waste haulers. That's what I found as part of the annexation discussion. We think a lot of people, when they annex, they're gonna save money because they're under the city contract for waste.
Right, and that's what I think is one of the benefits that we need to list out. But I also feel like, that a lot of these are residents of Batavia, even though they're not actually in the city. And, like they're just getting taken on. A lot of the contracts and the numbers that I've heard are just astronomical for, just the typical service.
And just a reminder to council, and I know we've talked to you about this, that we have experienced under our contract customer service issues since the buyout and since Waste Management has taken over. Things like, not ticket sales, sticker sales, thank you, the term dropped out of my head. Things as simple as sticker sales. You all know how much difficulty we've had over the last several months getting retailers and sticker sales, so.
And
It's
on-hold times?
Yes, on-hold
smaller
times, trying to get a hold of customer
Right.
service, so.
Well,
We haven't involved and do not involve ourselves in the unincorporated and the business contracts, but I can sympathize with those
Right.
folks. Because it's the same issues we're experiencing.
right, okay. So I don't know if we have some contacts there, or if we have new contacts, or who they are, or are they available?
One is a new contact and one is an old contact.
Okay.
So that is a holdover from the former.
Okay.
So,
If you could get those to me, just send me an email with the names and numbers, and I'll try and contact them and see what they say.
Why don't you invite them in for a committee meeting?
I might have to do that,
I
so,
think it'd be a good idea.
I'll have a discussion with them, and then I'll see if I want them in here or not. Okay. If there are no others, then we will need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel and collective bargaining.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Saron, second by Solfa. Roll call, please.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger. Aye. Miller,
Aye.
Rosato,
Aye.
Beck,
Aye.
Connolly.
Aye.
Chancet absent, Silva,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
and Ewer.
Aye.